Today I have something really fancy for you again, and it's about Billy Jenkins. Billy Jenkins was an artist, a circus artist, who was working in the 1920s up to the 1940s, 50s, and he was a dompteur, so he was working with birds, with eagles and some other birds. And beside this, inspired by Buffalo Bill, they made up dime novels about him and his life as king of the cowboys. It was really crazy because, as I said, in the 1920s, his dad, here we have Billy Jenkins, here we have in the 1920s, in the 1920s, his dad had a variety where he was also working as a sharpshooter, and started later on being the impression of a cowboy and of the king of the cowboys. He later in his life said that he was learning these crafts and skills from trick roping to working with whip and knife throwing. He learned at 101 Ranch, where a lot of artists learned their stuff, but probably he never was in the States. The thing is that it's really difficult to get valid information about Buffalo Bill. He even told the people that he was going with Buffalo Bill and he was at the Buffalo Bill show, but this could not be true because his name could not be found in the artists list from the Buffalo Bill show. So he was making up everything. And a friend of him, Sarasani, Hans-Stosch Sarasani, was a circus person who had a large circus, and he was also working for him, and they were friends. So when Billy Jenkins had no engagement in a circus, he was living in the house of his parents, where they had a little cafe in the late 1920s. And after the death of the parents, he took this over and tried to work and to keep on in the 1930s this cafe in Berlin, Tegel. But this did not work because the Nazis had some trouble with the Jewish people, and he was half Jew. But he was so famous as circus artist, that even Adolf Hitler was a great fan of him. So, and it was a really fancy story because he made up so many stories about him as king of the cowboys that even Adolf Hitler thought it was right and it was not made up. And so he was very famous for his bird shows he made. So he was even working, even in the 1930s, he was working in Berlin. So not just, he had also engagements in Italy at that time, but he was even working in Berlin, even with other Jewish people, had some troubles, but he was working actively in telling the people stories that the Rosenthal, what his normal name, the name in his passport was, for everybody he was Billy Jenkins. So a made-up story, completely fake, but he survived, and he survived Hitler's regime by also going through the arena with the Third Reich flag and whatever. He was making it totally up. But a crazy person. We planned to do a movie about Patti Frank, and they were friends, not direct deep friends, but they had known each other, and this dress is as good as the dresses that were used in Wild West shows at that time in America. So, but nothing of it was made in America, and he ordered, because he had a large accident, one of the circus at that time was traveling by train, and when they were moving the circus he was at, I don't know exactly, but I think it was Circus Krone, his wagon burned down, and he tried to save his birds but burned himself very, very heavily. So he had really trouble his whole life with this accident and with these burnings of his whole body. So this guy playing cowboy, dressing up as a Native American garb, but nothing of it was real. And he survived the Nazi regime by playing a different person from a different heritage, whatever. It's a really crazy story, and the one who we want to make a movie about, a documentary about Patty Frank, that his dresses were so good that everybody believed him to be king of the cowboys, and being at Buffalo Bill show and so on. The reason for this was Patty Frank and his collection of original items in his little museum, because these items were ordered in Dresden from somebody else who was just doing beadwork for sale for these circus artists, and where he learned to make these items look as good was at the collection from Patty Frank, who made up a little museum with Clara May at the house of Karl May, who was writing dime novels starting in the, I think, 1870s, 1880s. So it's a really crazy story, and it's a whole network of crazy people, absolutely dime novel worthy people, all of them, because all had so fancy stories, and even made these stories again up and made them bigger and crazier than you could expect it was really fancy, because it's even today it's difficult to get information about this guy. That is true, because there's so much false information around that it's really difficult. And we have one book that's from Michael Zaremba, and I put a link below. He did a very good research on it, because a lot of other books about Billy Jenkins, he was very famous because of these dime novels, were just made up, and there was so much false information around. And the only really good job is from Michael Zaremba, who did a lot of research on it. So, but the crazy thing is that we have photographies from, I think, a little bit later, maybe the 1940s to early 1950s, about the circus wagon of Billy Jenkins. So you can have a look at how this guy lived and about the impression he even gave within his circus wagon. So I just show you some pictures. Here you see the roof of the wagon, and here are small lights that are on top of the roofs of these old circus wagons. And you see a lot of Native American decor. These pictures here, they were prints that were made in the 1930s, 1830s, 18s to 1860s, and they were available as prints even in Germany, from all these famous artists, Wild West artists we still know today. So and you see a typical decor of the 1940s with all these printed curtains. And here you see, it's a little bit further on the wall, you see all these beaded vests. This is not the vest he is wearing at this card. It's a different one, but maybe she is wearing one of them. So you see this here. And you see, it's a lot of decor. Some is coming from the States, but most of the items were even made in Germany. Where we didn't know this, it's a fancy story. So here's, you see the entrance. So here's this couch with the pictures, and you see the other side. So, and here again is one of the wall with all the vests hanging on the side. Here you have the windows inside. Here's a window. Here's a window, and these pictures are at the top of the roof from the inside. And then here you have the small windows, and you have the circus wagons, and had some lights inside the roof, the lights, and then another middle part of the roofs at that time. So you clearly see this. And where we know from that these items were not original is here you see also Billy Jenkins he's at Vienna, and you see these guys with the feather bonnets, and probably, or I think these are also from Billy Jenkins, from his own collection, but they were made up in Germany and especially in Dresden. And where we know this is the back of this postcard. There is another one in existence, but I don't know where it came, or it's now. But in the books from Michael Zaremba, he collected a similar one where Billy Jenkins had his attire he's wearing here, and this attire was destroyed once because he had to, there was a circus wagon that was burned down, and he ordered later on, after he recovered, he ordered again this dress, this whole outfit he was wearing here and again up to the 1950s. So and this, he ordered it from a guy who was doing beadwork in Dresden, and Patti was sitting in Radebeul, that's near Dresden, with his collection, and even they were all friends, they were all one network. So the funny thing is that Billy Jenkins could survive playing, could survive the Nazi regime, playing another character from somewhere else in this world, and playing it as good, and with the attire that even was made in Germany, and not original, but he made it up as he would coming over and survive the Nazi regime just because of this. That's a funny story. And at the back, in this postcard, he is ordering in German. He's ordering a feather bonnet, and so he's ordering a feather bonnet at somebody from Dresden, I think, because this guy in Dresden beaded a lot of stuff for circus artists and even for him, and we know this from the other postcard that's published in the Zaremba. I put some links below to the book. Maybe you're interested in. So it's a crazy world, a crazy story. So maybe a fancy story, and maybe you're interested in our movie about a friend of him and Patti Frank, who is directly connected to him. So it's a really crazy story about circus artists in Germany, and even how he survived the Holocaust. And it's a fancy story that's belonging into this, I would not say game, but a thing, playing another culture and surviving something bad about it, just simply not telling anybody he's part Jewish, but he's king of cowboys. Nothing more, a little than king of the cowboys. It was really fancy. So yeah, goodbye. Look at the other videos, please, and hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully in a better quality look at our movie when we ever get it made. So bye.